This is Real Estate 360. I'm your host, Steve Vazza. I have the pleasure of having John Rosenthal on today. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Yeah, Meredith Management. You guys have been around a long time.
Yeah, my father started the business in 1951.
1951, and you've been, developing and managing apartments and condos and all types of real estate food groups over the years, and your reputation is fantastic in the marketplace.
Thanks. Yeah, my father developed the first Massachusetts housing finance agency mixed income affordable apartment complex in 1969, and we've developed about 2,000 units since, both affordable market condominiums. We've also expanded into office, retail, and parking.
And that's all in the general Boston area, because I know you've said before
you'd
like to be able to drive to it.
Yeah, I decided a long time ago that if I can't drive to it, I don't want to own it, because of absentee ownership often leads to management nightmares. So we manage everything that we own. We've managed up to 5 million square feet of bank-owned property during the downturn, or one of the downturns.
You were doing a lot with the FDIC at the time, correct?
That's right. We were the
Bank of New England. And
we were the largest property management company for the FDIC and Bank of New England at one point. So it was a great opportunity to see what was out there. We were one of the few companies that didn't have any problems with lenders, so we had a clean track record, good reputation,
that always helps.
And it was just good fee-based management, but we also got to see a lot of things that were becoming available, and we saw the problems before a majority of people did. I think, the big downturn started in 1987, but a lot of people didn't even know it until 1989, when it was too late for them.
Very, very true. I was developing property with my dad at the time, and we experienced the same exact thing. So many people were actually, they were late to the party, so to speak. So what you've said there, I wholeheartedly agree with. Yeah. So you're working on some exciting things right now over in the Fenway.
Yeah, it's been a kind of a labor of love.
Yeah.
It took about 15 years to...
labor of love, it's 1.3 million, isn't it?
It's 1,300,000 square feet.
That's a big labor of love.
Mixed use development at the gateway to Boston, next to Fenway Park. So the first thing that I had to do was build the Yawkey Station commuter rail and make it a full service train station. So for 20 years, this train station been operating on basically one track, one short platform, 17 stops a day. And it was the train station for Fenway Park and the #1 economic engine in the Commonwealth, which is the Longwood Medical Area. So the legislature approved funding to make it a full-service train station. I took it on as a design-build project because I had been designated for this MTA, or Mass Turnpike Authority, Parcel 7. I went through the approval process, got approved for 1,300,000 square feet. We needed to build the train station first, built probably...
So while you were doing that, you were going through the permitting process.
That's right. Yeah. So probably built the first MBTA commuter rail station, or any station, on time and on budget, because I did it on a design-build basis. I took the risk.
Yep.
As long as the MBTA didn't change the scope, I would deliver it at a price and on time, which I did, because we're building on and around it. So Fenway Center includes about 4 acres, 2 acres of land, 2 acres of air rights, literally airspace over the Massachusetts Turnpike.
Which is almost unprecedented.
Between Beacon Street and Brookline Ave. One of the best addresses in Boston. Buildings looking into Fenway Park, at the gateway to Boston, with amazing views of the Boston skyline as well as west.
It's really amazing, over the years, how we've seen Boston. You and I were talking earlier, we're similar in age relatively, and I remember
you're being kind.
Years ago. Boston, there was a small section, and we all knew it. And, Boston, whether it's the Seaport District and, the Back Bay and all these different areas, they're just growing exponentially. We see this push out into the Fenway area and what's going on over there. I think about it, what it was 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and what it is today. The amount of development, smart development, like yourself, you've got all this transit oriented and all the retail and the housing and whatnot. It's really just, you're at the forefront of it. You're leading the way. You're the tip of the spear, and what you're doing there is just absolutely fantastic.
Well, thanks. There has not been an air rights project in Boston built over the turnpike and rails since 1980 with Copley Place.
Right.
And there's a reason
1980, that's
yeah.
how long ago that was.
Right. So you got Prudential, Copley. Most of the turnpike is at grade, so you can't really go over it. But where you have bridges and land on either side, you can deck over it. The problem is it's more expensive to build a deck over the highway and rails than it is to buy land next to the highway and rails.
Makes sense.
And it's a 99-year lease versus buying the property. There's a lot of things that are complicated about it, but this site is very developable.
But you're known for dealing with complications and unwinding them.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is one of the best locations in the city of Boston. It was worth fighting for. We have a 99-year lease now on phase 1, which includes 2 buildings. One's 8 stories and 100 units. The other is 14 stories and 212 units, 37,000 square feet of retail at the base and parking below. On Beacon Street, David Ortiz Way, and next to the commuter rail station. So it's really where the pebble will drop for smart growth, transit-oriented development. It'll be 312 units with retail and parking. It will be Gold LEED certified.
Is there a hotel component?
There isn't in phase 1.
No.
Phase 2 will include a deck from Beacon Street to Brookline Ave over 8 lanes of highway and 2 tracks.
Wow, what an ambitious project. That's phenomenal.
27-story, these are all fully approved, 27-story mixed-use tower of office, residential, and retail at the base. A parking garage that'll be shared by Red Sox fans, retail users, the Longwood Medical Area, and the entertainment district. And then another building on Brookline Ave, which will be apartments or office. So total is 1,300,000 square feet. The first 2 buildings are under construction now.
And who's the contractor?
It's John Moriarty and Associates.
Fantastic firm.
Yep.
Been around forever.
The architectural team is our architects. I've worked with them before. Our co-developer is Girding Eadlin. They did 315 on A, the Troy, the Eddy in East Boston. And our investors are our teachers' retirement system, and our debt is with Union Life, Ulico. So look, we're in a union town. We got union investors, and we got a union lender,
Union contractor,
and of course a union contractor. And I've really enjoyed working with the unions. I mean, they really know what they're doing. They build a really quality product.
They really do, and it sounds, John, like the unions, the state, all of the municipal boards have really, it's been really a collaborative effort. It sounds and seems on this particular project like everybody's really worked toward a common goal, which is getting something off the ground, with quality, a quality team, and something that the Boston skyline is going to say, this is the gateway to the Fenway, and it's perfection.
Right, and you got a mayor who really supports transit, energy-oriented development. You got a governor who really wants to show that the state is open for business, and we were able to get a lease, a 99-year lease with MassDOT, which no one had really been successful in getting in the past. And phase 1 is going to build momentum for phase 2. Now, to build over 4 lanes in each direction and 2 tracks, it's very, very challenging. And it requires a partnership. Like we have a partnership with the city who wanted this large project to get approved, and the neighborhood groups who accepted more density, more parking in order to be able to afford to build over the highway and connect neighborhoods. The state has to understand that since it's more expensive to build over the highway than build on a surface parking lot next to the highway, that they need to account for that in the long-term rent structure. And we have structured that deal accordingly. And I really do think that we'll get phase 2 done, and it will be sort of truly the model for smart growth, transit-oriented development in Boston, a place where you can live, work, and play without using your car. Yeah. And it'll be Gold LEED certified. And that train station that I built in 2014, we've designed a solar array. So I don't know about you, but we've done like 9 solar photovoltaic power plants using renewable energy tax credits here in the state, which were very robust.
Yeah, as a real estate developer, we have not done that, but I certainly, understand and appreciate the, what you're doing with it.
So we've designed a solar array, photovoltaic solar array on top of the garage that will actually generate more power than the commuter rail station uses.
Wow.
So it'll be a solar powered train station next to a gold LEED certified mixed use development.
Unbelievable. It's really amazing what you're doing over there. It's funny you said just a few minutes ago, and I completely agree with you, is that Massachusetts is really open for business. I'm fortunate. I've been to all 50 states, and I travel this country, and I talk to a lot of people, and our reputation is that we're open for business. I think at the government level, they're doing a superb job at getting that message out.
We've done a lot of things right here in Massachusetts. I mean, we somehow are viewed as like this liberal bastion, but honestly, I think we're progressive, and we're fair, and we're bipartisan.
We are.
I mean, whether you look at what we've done around gun violence, we are the state with the most effective gun laws that have been enacted on a bipartisan basis, and we have the lowest gun death rate in the nation. When you look at opioids on a bipartisan basis, we were one of the first states in the nation to actually recognize and confront this epidemic.
Well, it's interesting, and it's something that I pay a lot of attention to. I mean, I really believe that the opioid epidemic, and I mean we're deviating from real estate, but it's all part and parcel of a successful nation translates into successful business and successful real estate, et cetera, et cetera. And the opioid crisis, I think, is the epidemic of our time.
Yeah, that and gun violence.
And gun violence.
Yeah. It's really, and they're both disastrous public policies that led to disastrous public health outcomes. I mean, you got an inherently dangerous product like a firearm, yet it's unregulated, period. No background check in 30 states and at thousands of gun shows. And we have an epidemic of gun violence. Here in Massachusetts, we simply treat guns like automobiles, inherently dangerous products, and I'm a gun owner, that need to be regulated so that there's accountability and responsibility over an inherently dangerous product. With opioids, I mean, you got a pharmaceutical industry that has basically created this epidemic. We are 5% of the world's population in this country, consuming 80% of all prescription drugs. 80% of people that end up getting hooked on heroin or fentanyl or you name it start with legally prescribed opioids.
Well, your reputation certainly is one of, not only are you a real estate developer, but you're a very vocal advocate for, affordable housing, as you mentioned, gun rights, opioid. It sounds like you've got a lot more on your plate than just real estate.
Well, I started a group called Friends of Boston's Homeless in 1987 because we developed a lot of affordable housing.
That's over in Roxbury.
We're all over. We're all over.
I thought it started at Roxbury.
No, we started with the Long Island shelter and providing doors and windows and programs out there, and then we developed transitional and permanent housing, including in Jamaica Plain and Roxbury, and we dramatically, helped move people beyond shelter. But I got involved in that issue because we developed affordable housing. In 1980, the HUD budget was $34 billion. When Carter left office. And prior to that, we had developed about 10 affordable housing complexes. By 1988, when Reagan left office, the HUD budget was cut from $34 billion to $9 billion, and the number of homeless people went from 200,000 to 2 million. So we created the Friends of Boston's Homeless to help people move beyond shelter. And it's an affordable housing crisis. And the longer people are homeless, the more compounded the problems became. So I partnered with the City of Boston to create the Friends of Boston's Homeless, which is a vehicle for people in the business community to plug into the solution of homelessness, just like Stop Handgun Violence in 1995, a vehicle for people in the business community to plug into gun violence. And now with the police-assisted addiction and recovery initiative that we created in Gloucester just 2.5 years ago, we're a vehicle for people to, get involved in the epidemic of of opioids. And lo and behold, 2.5 years since we started with the Gloucester Police Department, we're in 28 states and 380 police departments, all providing access to treatment through police departments and pre-arrest. No stigma, no blame, no shame. Exposing the bad public policy, which is largely driven by stigma. I mean, if you show up in an emergency room with heart disease, diabetes, cancer, you're treated with respect and treated with medication for the rest of your life.
That's very true.
You show up with the disease of addiction, you're shamed, blamed, stigmatized, kicked back to the street to die. So we've changed the conversation.
But don't you think, John, that the narrative is changing? That, you know, I know I certainly see addiction as a disease.
Yeah.
As a disease, and I think Americans are starting to realize that, you know, the opioid epidemic, heroin, you know, all the whatever else is, it can be thrown into that.
Yep.
It doesn't discriminate. Okay.
No.
It can be behind any door in every community.
That's right.
And I think people are realizing that, and because of that,
right.
You know, people are starting to realize, you know, this could be my kid, or this could be my friend's kid.
It is their kid.
It is their kid. It is their kid. You're absolutely right.
It is their kid. No, there's no family that is not touched by this now.
Yeah.
And similar to, or you know, conversely, you know, when there was an epidemic of crack and it was quote just black kids in the inner city dying, who cares? Mm-hmm. Now this is an epidemic that's affecting largely middle and upper middle class white kids, and it's an epidemic.
It's an epidemic. Yeah.
But we changed the conversation through the conservative voice of law enforcement, saying, cops started this conversation saying, we can't arrest our way out of a public health crisis.
No, we can't.
And we're going to provide access to treatment and use our conservative voice to change the conversation until the healthcare system catches up. Medication works really well for the disease of addiction. And so we need to provide medication-assisted treatment for the disease of addiction, just like we provide for every other, you know, medical condition. And we're starting to see things change.
Well, they have to. I mean, things have to change. I've said, you know, and my numbers could be wrong at this point because I know it's growing every day. But, you know, the equivalent of 2 747, Boeing 747s crash each week. That's the death toll of opioids. And I've said in many cases that if that was happening in the aviation industry, they'd shut the aviation industry down until they figured it out. We can't be losing, you know, our youth and the equivalent of, you know, 2 747s crashing every week and stand idly and do nothing about it. I think the nation is finally, we as a country are starting to deal with it.
175 people will die from overdoses today.
Yeah. It's unacceptable in the United States.
300 people will be shot today. 100 will die from largely preventable gun violence. And the gun industry is entirely 100% unregulated and can't be sued. Can you imagine if hamburgers caused 8 kids to die a day, 100 Americans to die a day?
Right.
Do you think meat packers would remain unregulated? But, you know, it's interesting having this conversation because for me, you know, balance is the most important word in our vocabulary. And the balance between the for-profit and the nonprofit work has sort of put, using a bad term, put both my business and my nonprofit world on steroids because the communities around the Fenway, Kenmore, Fenway, Audubon Circle, all trusted me when I said, we need 27 stories. We need 1,300,000 square feet of density in order to afford to be able to build in this location and over the rails and track. Now, this isn't when they were telling Arthur Wynn and Columbus Center, sorry, we don't trust you, we don't like you, we're going to, you know, make you spend $140 million in permits and approvals and tank the whole project, which is what happened.
That's exactly what happened.
You know, and for me instead, you know, it was like, you're the kind of developer we want to work with, we trust you, and it was largely because of all the work I do around homelessness, gun violence, and opioids.
Private partnership.
And I don't do it to manipulate anybody, but I have a balance in my life, and I think the communities around us really sort of got me and got the importance of this balance that you can do good and do well.
That balance has permeated, you know, your business reputation, which is, you know, stellar. and you're known for sort of philanthropy in the sense of caring about humanity, your years with the affordable housing and your advocacy in the gun space and opioids. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your billboard, which I've been driving by since it feels like since I was a kid. So I love the billboard. The message, unfortunately, is not one that I'm sure anybody's necessarily proud of. But tell me about it.
Sure.
How you got into that?
Sure. So when I bought the Lansdowne parking garage in 1991 or 2, I realized that we had 300 feet of frontage on the Massachusetts Turnpike that was seen by some 250,000 people a day. And I had just finished negotiating a billboard lease on the roof and saw how much people were willing to pay for a billboard. It didn't hurt that the other side looked into Fenway Park and was, every hit to left field was on TV.
On TV for
it was also funny because when I bought this garage, now this was during the downturn. I bought it out of foreclosure, a 340 space garage across the street from the Green Monster in the entertainment district. Every once in a while luck and timing, works out in which is a lot of our business. But also resilience
Especially
and perseverance can add a lot, can help the luck and timing. But in any case, bought this building. It had roof leaks all over the place. We realized that when we went on the roof, the covers to the roof drains were off the roof drains, and baseballs were stuck in the roof drains, causing the leaks. So anyway, we fixed up the building a little. We signed long-term leases. We got billboard leases. And I realized, wow, we got 300 feet of frontage on the Mass Pike, a bunch of broken windows in an old warehouse. Right. So someone told me that, and I've been a gun owner my whole adult life, but I didn't know the effects of gun violence at the time. This was in 94, told me that 15 kids under 19 died every single day, 106 Americans every single day from gun violence. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized it's because they're unregulated. No other country has this problem.
You and I talked about that.
Every other country has mentally ill people like us. No other country arms them with military-style assault weapons and easily concealed handguns without background checks or detection by law enforcement. That's why we lose 35 to 40,000 Americans every year from gun violence. So I figured most people don't know that. So Michael Kennedy, my best friend at the time, who's no longer with us, we built the biggest billboard in America, 20 feet tall, 252 feet long.
Biggest billboard in America.
And we put 15 beautiful color photographs of kids killed by guns and said the cost of handguns are going up, 15 kids killed every day. And presidents would tell me they drove by the billboard. Bill Clinton told me that he would change his entourage route depending on who was with him to see the billboard. It became a national icon. We then changed laws based on it. I mean, Bob DeLeo told me.
It's at the entrance to the city coming down the Mass Pike. I mean, you can't visit Boston and not know this billboard.
So after Sandy Hook, when 26 and 7-year-olds were massacred in their classroom along with 6 teachers, Speaker DeLeo called me and said, I'd like to meet. I'd never met him. And by the time I even sat down in his office, he recited the number of dead kids killed since Sandy Hook that was on our electronic counter.
Right.
Elizabeth Warren, Al Gore, you name it. They all would call and say, I love your billboard, what can I do to help? When they were running for office. We had a message on the billboard that said, it's easier to child-proof your gun than bulletproof your child. Lock your gun.
Lock your gun.
Al Gore used that as a campaign slogan. So basically we were able to change the conversation with the billboard, from banning guns or unlimited access to guns to how are kids, criminals, the dangerously mentally ill accessing guns without banning them, and then filing legislation, passing legislation in 98 and 2004 signed by Republican governors, Cellucci and Romney, and then again in 2014 leading Massachusetts as the state with the lowest gun death rate in the nation. And now after Parkland, and there have been 14 more school shootings since Parkland, people are coming to us and asking, how did you do it? How is an urban state so effective in reducing gun violence? So I'm hoping with the voice of these kids, if it's sustained, maybe it'll be just like other student movements like civil rights and the war in Vietnam and divestiture from South Africa and apartheid, kids will ultimately change policy and force the spineless members of Congress who are in the pocket of the NRA to change their votes, or will change the members of Congress.
Well, clearly, John, you know, you're an advocate on so many fronts, and I can see why this is translated into, you know, such an amazing company. What you have done over the years, what you did with your dad, you know, obviously transforming the Fenway into this, you know, incredible project that you're working on. You know, it's really been a pleasure talking to you. You know, you've heard it right here. You know, John is at the forefront of so many issues, not only just a fine real estate developer, but, you know, an advocate for, you know, guns and opioids, much of which we don't talk about on this particular show, as, you know, we're real estate related, but, you know, all roads lead back to Rome.
But let me sort of help knit this together, because, you know, I'd mentioned that balance is probably the most important word. Well, I think
it's a good word.
The next one is connections and community. So we're in the business of building communities.
Well said. That's very true.
And creating the most livable and workable and comfortable either work or living environments is an honor and a responsibility.
Honor, privilege, and a responsibility.
And if you're comfortable at home and you feel safe in your community and you participate in your community and you connect. I mean, I read once that if you're lucky enough to live to be 90, that's 780,000 hours. That's all you get.
That's all you get on this earth.
That's all you get. So who you connect with, the community that you're a part of,
how you treat people,
and what you do is all you ever really have. And so to have this sort of the intangible, you know, working on policies to create tangible results in public health outcomes, and the tangibleness of developing real estate and creating a sense of community wherever you live or work. I mean, it just all fits together for me.
It certainly does, and that was so well articulated. John Rosenthal with the Meredith Management Company. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you very much.
Good to be here.